Gearbox Software suggested to be involved in something shady? No. Randy Pitchford accused of being dishonest? No. You can add this to the list of lawsuits that Randy Pitchford's involved with, but composer Bobby Prince, who's done music for a bunch of classic shooters like Wolfenstein, the early Doom games, and most pertinently Duke Nukem 3D, has filed a lawsuit against Gearbox Software, Randy Pitchford, and Valve, saying that music was used without his permission for Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary World Tour. Apparently, Bobby Prince wrote 16 songs for Duke Nukem 3D way back in the day, way back in 1996, but in an agreement with the original developer Apogee, they only had the right to use the music, they didn't own it. The lawsuit states, Apogee had a limited right to use Mr. Prince's music in Duke Nukem 3D in exchange for a royalty equal to $1 per unit sold. The lawsuit alleges that Bobby Prince still owns the music copyright. He has the reserved rights to the music's use, but when Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary World Tour was released, the original music was incorporated without his permission. Prince alleges that he was never even contacted by Gearbox, they just put the music in there without letting him know. And as far as accusations go for good old Gearbox CEO Randy Pitchford, Prince says that he contacted the CEO directly to ask for royalties for the music that was used in the game, and Randy Bobandy told him that he would be taken care of, but no money was forthcoming. And despite the lack of royalties, Pitchford refused to remove the music from the game. Valve's part of the lawsuit because Bobby Prince asked Steam to remove the game due to this, apparently unlawful use of music, but, and I quote, Valve ignored a takedown notice, thus waiving any immunity under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and continued distributing infringing copies of the music despite knowing that Mr. Prince owned the copyrights in the music. These are some interesting allegations. I would be willing to give Gearbox the benefit of the doubt and say that, they had the rights to Duke Nukem 3D to release the game, but maybe they simply didn't know about the separate music agreement with Apogee. Licenses are tricky things, and while you should realistically know who has the rights to which assets in your game, I could reasonably see Gearbox overlooking a music agreement from 1996, especially since it was an agreement with Apogee, not with Gearbox. However, if it's true that Randy Pitchford did acknowledge in correspondence with Prince that he should be taken care of, if he didn't at the time dispute that Prince had the rights to the music, well then this is fairly straightforward. And I know when we're just at the filing of a lawsuit stage, when we're just at allegations, we shouldn't jump to conclusions. But in the court of public opinion, Randy Pitchford has made a rod for his own back with his history of shady behaviour. The idea of him saying he'd take care of someone who was owed money and then didn't take care of them is almost mundane for the man at this point. And bear in mind, these allegations come from a respected composer in the game industry. He's got nothing to gain from lying here. I'm going through the lawsuit and it's a fairly detailed chain of events here. Bobby Prince made Gearbox aware that he was owed royalties. Randy said he'd take care of him, but that was apparently a false claim. It says here, Mr. Pitchford began stringing Mr. Prince along with the promises that he would do right by Mr. Prince, and that Mr. Prince would be taken care of. The promises were false when made. Before Gearbox Software and Gearbox Publishing released Duke Nukem 3D World Tour, Mr. Pitchford received a copy of the 1996 license between Apogee and Mr. Prince. He thus knew that Mr. Prince owned the rights to the music and that Apogee had to pay Mr. Prince for its use of the music in prior versions of Duke Nukem games. Gearbox Software and Gearbox Publishing released Duke Nukem 3D World Tour on October 11th, 2016. The game included music composed by Mr. Prince that is covered by his copyright registration, and sound effects and edited dialogue created by Mr. Prince. The electronic files for the music within Duke Nukem 3D World Tour include text specifically stating that Mr. Prince owns the copyright to the music. Eventually, Mr. Pitchford directed Steve Gibson, the head of publishing at Gearbox Publishing, to make sure that Gearbox was doing right by Mr. Prince. Despite receiving a direct order to do right by Mr. Prince, Gearbox proceeded to distribute infringing copies of Duke Nukem 3D World Tour without obtaining a license and without compensating Mr. Prince. Eventually, it became evident that Gearbox had no intention of paying Mr. Prince for its use of his music. Mr. Prince advised Gearbox that it could either pay him according to the terms of the original license for the music, or remove his music from the game. Mr. Pitchford and Gearbox did neither. So it's allegations of copyright infringement all around, with the parties accused of knowing it was copyright infringement and doing bugger all about it. All in all, not a good look for a company that has been embroiled in controversy after controversy, due in no small part to its CEO, who is currently in another legal battle with a former lawyer of his, and was earlier this year credibly accused of physically assaulting one of his employees in a hotel lobby. I've said it in the past and I'll say it again: as the CEO of a private company, Randy Pitchford can't be fired. But it would maybe benefit his company and the people who work within it if he just stepped away from the public eye, maybe forever? I mean, he's not the only one being accused here. The company overall and Valve are on the hook as well, but let's be completely honest with ourselves. What's making this story especially spicy? Why am I here talking about this on a Sunday evening when I should be playing some more Code Vein? And who is half the comment section on this video poking fun at? At least the half who aren't poking fun at me. Why, that would be the guy who's already in another lawsuit, who's been caught lying through his arse on several occasions, and has just been a controversy magnet, a walking shitstorm. In any case, if Bobby Prince is owed money, I hope he gets the money that's due to him. Better that than the game being taken down over something so silly as Gearbox not paying a musician what the musician's owed. And you know, this is a good call to any developer, any publisher that's got an old game from the 90s that they want to sell again. Check the rights, you know, just make sure that every part of the game is something you have a right to sell. Because the game industry is really good at jumping on other people who they think infringe on their copyright. It's only fair that the game industry respects the copyright of others. All that said, I do cheekily use music from games in these videos sometimes, but they can always claim the ad revenue if they want it. Half of them do.